Hey guys, today's project is going to be creating a kind of an airbox for the intake. See, when I have the filter going down and into the fender bay, it just leaves this giant hole that isn't finished. So when I was at the drag strip this past weekend, I saw my buddy's Caprice PPV. He had a over the radiator setup from a company called VCM. Well, what VCM sells is a block-off panel for this giant hole. That's what's there when you remove the stock airbox. Here is that block-off plate. I got this block-off plate from Improved Racing. Improved Racing is, I believe, the sole U.S. distributor for the VCM intakes in the United States. And the warning on the website even says you will have to trim to fit. So come to find out, so I removed the intake. I put the block-off plate in. But what's happening is the headlight, this headlight bracket right here, it's like the back of the bulb, I believe, for the HID, that is actually hitting the block-off plate. So I just grabbed a silver Sharpie marker, and that is probably, I don't know, half an inch by like 3 or 4 inches, and I'll trim that. I'm just going to use some shears and cut that. This is pretty thin plastic, so I should be able to cut right through that. If not, I use a Dremel. So, but that was really the only thing that I saw that was in the way from fitting this plate into the car. Oh, and I also took off this ground strap. That was an 8mm bolt, and it just pulls right out. Pull that out so that you could get the block-off tray underneath there. This hole on top has to go through that stud right there, and then I have the nut right there. So that's the first step. The second step is going to be cut a hole in this plate around the pipe. Okay guys, as you can see, I actually got the panel in. The holes line up. This top stud and this bottom hole lines up, but still running into an interference with the back of the HID bulb bezel. So what I'm going to do is trim this again. What I ended up using was my bandsaw to cut it, but my bandsaw couldn't reach all the way down, so I was able to cut as much with it as I could. Then I just used a pair of snips, wire snips, to cut the tabs off, and I was able to get this piece cut. So the stuff's not very thick. I tried to use some sheet metal cutters, but the stuff it was just binding within the teeth of the cutters. So what I'm gonna do is take this off, trim off about another 1/4 inch of it, and then this should fit just fine. And then I'm gonna have to figure out the logistics of the bend that comes down and then cutting a hole for the intake. So, okay guys, I have the blockout plate sitting flush now. It's all the way in. Screws are easily accessible. I did have to trim this one more time up here. I think it could stand to be clearance a little bit more right here, but as of right now, I think it's going to be fine. For this to finish clearancing that, all I used was my belt sander, and I just ground off. It's just plastic. Just ground it off until it got flush and it fits. Okay guys, here's my prototype next to the VCM. All I did was take some cardboard, cut it out to the general shape. So I got, the flat part, the angled part here, the flat part on the bottom. I didn't do the bottom because it wasn't really necessary, because that just bends down and goes into the frame. But I got the overall shape, and to keep these two pieces in the same spot, I poked a hole where that top stud goes. So there's a stud right here, poked a hole through the piece of cardboard so that the cardboard would sit in the stud. And this is kind of what I ended up with. So it's just a piece of cardboard that, I cut, and yes, I cut it a little bit too big the first time, but that's why there's tape kind of filling the gaps that I cut too big. You could do, put cardboard back in, cut it, trim it, put tape on, but just to screw it, the tape was fine. The tape is going to give me the general shape of what I need. sure I'm going to have to trim this down. You know, I'm going to put it in, make the cut, and then I'm sure I'm going to have to adjust it from there. So the reason the pipe has a kind of a oval shape in it is because this pipe is coming down and then it's going into this gap at a 45-degree angle. So that's why it's kind of a sideways oval, and that's where we're going to end up cutting. Okay guys, I have finished the prototype. I actually didn't have a picture of it installed. So here is the cardboard fully surrounding the intake and isolating it from the engine bay. There's a little bit of a gap here, but I think with the hard plastic that won't be there. You know, this cardboard, it's just taped together. So, but yeah, it's pretty simple how to prototype it. Let's get the template traced out and then start cutting. Okay guys, you can see that I have trimmed the black plate out and I have installed it. The only thing I haven't done is add the 10mm nut here with the stud and the 10mm bolt down here. As you can see with me pressing down on this, the case, the blackout piece for the fender blackout piece, it's pretty loose. It's a little tight maybe here and on the back side down here. But I've left like probably an 1/8 inch gap. Tried to leave an 1/8 inch gap all the way around. So I'm gonna probably have to trim one more time around here, and because basically what I noticed was when I left it, when I cut the hole a little too tight, I noticed that when I was moving the pipe around, it had no room to move. As you can see here, it's got room to move. So if we expand this hole just a little bit up top and a little bit on the back of the pipe here, we should be good. But so like I said, use a stencil with the cardboard, cut that out, and then be careful with the blackout plate. You don't want to have to order another one of these. Cut the hole too small and then expand it where you need it. So like I said, I see where I need to expand it around here. So what I think I'm going to do to help close that gap is go get some of that rubber door edge trim. It's the stuff you see people put on the side of their door so that like they don't door ding into the wall or something like that. Well, if I get, they sell in like a truck size and like a car size. I think I'm going to get the car size, it's a little bit smaller, and just put it along the edge here, and that should take up any gap on the back side of the panel. Okay guys, I have officially finished trimming this plate. I've got some marks on it I need to clean up with some paint thinner and stuff, but it's just Sharpie will come off. But here's the finished plate. I cleaned off the edges with a half circular file. It's a file that's flat on one end and round on the other. Use the round edge to go around the perimeter. Then I did probably a 45-degree angle on both sides to kind of feather it, and that way it got rid of all of the like flashing and all the plastic that melted. Because I cut this with a Dremel, I cut the hole out with the Dremel, and used that. And then I used some like 400 grit sandpaper just knock down the edge. That way it doesn't screw up the pipe, it doesn't cut me, and that way, that way it's just generally flat. So one of the upgrades I wanted to do with this swap was to isolate the cone filter from the engine bay heat. And you'll see a lot of setups, particularly with a company called Cold Air Solutions. What they do is they take their intake box and wrap it with a heat protective thermal barrier. So I found this product from DEI, Design Engineering Inc. And what this is, it's called Reflecticool. Basically, it's an adhesive-backed reflective, metal reflective panel. And this isn't that thick at all. This is probably, I mean, eighth, not even that. This stuff's real thin. But my thought is to reduce the heat by putting this cool wrap, Reflecticool wrap, on the inside of the airbox. That way I'm reflecting all the engine bay heat away from the filter, away from the air source, and that way it may knock down the IATs just a little bit. I don't know if this is going to help at all, but so what I ended up buying was a 12 by 12 sheet. As you can see by the little red dot there, I ordered part number 0460, and that was a 12 by 12 sheet, 12 inch by 12 inch. And what I'm going to do is actually wrap the inside of this panel from the line up till probably about here. There's a screw that has to go in, like the stud has to fit through here. So I'm probably only going to wrap till about this outer edge, and then like cut it off probably there. Cut it, follow the edge, and then I'm going to cut it here as well, because this bottom part, you see where these tabs are, that actually slides into the frame rail on the car. So I don't want there to be an interference fit with the frame rail and those clips. Actually, I might wrap it to where the clips are. Yeah, I'll probably cut it off there, and then I'll cut out a section for the screw here. So probably from the clips up till about here, and then till about here. I know I probably could press it into this mold, but I think that'll just get complicated, and I don't want to ruin the piece. And then obviously I'll cut it, probably cut a circle around the reflective material. Probably leave like a 1/4 inch around the hole, because that's where I'm going to stick that that edging trim that I was telling you about. That way I can put the edging trim, have the reflective surface on the inside, and that's kind of, I mean, and that'll be my own version of a cold air inductions box. Is they don't put this on the outside of their intake box, they put it on the inside to keep the reflective heat out. I think that's how that works. Okay guys, here's the finished product. What you see on the outside, you know, nothing, just black plastic, you know, not suspect anything. Flip it over, and you've got this reflective cool wrap from DEI. Now, what I did was, I just started on one end, you know, like I said, down by the clips, started there, pressed it like loosely, and then I went and grabbed a paint roller. This is for like some stain or edging, something, I don't remember. It's just a miniature paint roller that I've had, and I literally just kind of worked it into the creases, into the edges, and got as good as it's gonna get. So use that to tighten up any gaps. And then I actually went over the holes. I didn't think I was going to, but I ended up wrapping both holes. I just poked a hole in each end where the stud and where that bolt's gonna have to go through. So, and then for the center, I just used a razor blade knife and lightly scored around the hole. You know, I didn't want to cut into the plastic or anything, so I just lightly cut around, trimmed around this edge, and it came off in one piece. So, you know, this stuff, it's not super thick, but there is like a fiberglass matting to the back of it, which I guess that's the, you know, reflective absorption, you know, cooling part. And like I said, you know, unless you knew this was under there, you'd never suspect that. So kind of taking a page out of some of the competitors' airboxes and using some of the technology that they use. I don't know if this will do anything, but this sheet, it was only like $11 on Amazon. I got it on Prime. I got it in 2 days, and any piece, any of these little edges that I kind of missed or I cut too much, I just grabbed some of the leftovers, cut it, and I taped it back on there. So everything, this thing's pretty much covered from top to bottom, except for where the frame rail goes. I kind of already talked about. Okay guys, I'm about finished up with this install. I went to AutoZone and picked up some of this edge trim. It's by a company called Cowles. I got 18 feet of it. Really, you only need about 8 inches of it, but I guess I'll have plenty of leftover if I ever need this type of product again. It's basically a piece of rubber with a piece of adhesive on the very inside of it that'll help it stick. You basically wrap this around doors and trunk panels and stuff like that. But how I used it in my project, you see it right here. I actually used it on the edge of where I cut, and this way I don't have any jagged edges rubbing against the metal pipe. And I'm probably going to paint the pipe in a future project. I'm just not going to get to it right now. But as you can see, it goes all the way around. And it also helps take up some of the gap that, because I kind of trimmed this a little large this time on purpose. And it basically helps take up some of that, a little bit of that gap. And as you can see, I can still clearly move the panel around the pipe. And also the pipe can move pretty freely inside of this panel still. So that should just help prevent any plastic rubbing on the metal. Not that I'm worried. I mean, this is pretty 1/8" aluminum piping. Not that I'm worried about putting a hole in or anything, but just something to help protect it. Alright guys, I have officially wrapped up this project. The cone filter, the J-bend, the hose clamps, these are all attached. The blockout plate, the thermal barrier on the back of it, and the edge trim, you can kind of see the gloss trim. It's all done. I also put the 10mm stud and the 10mm bolt on the bottom. It's all back and done. So that's it. This project's finally wrapped up. This has taken me like a week to do because I had to order the plate, I had to cut the hole, I had to wait for the thermal barrier, I had to make trips for the edging, that black plastic rubber ring on the end, and it's just been a lot of work to get this done. So it's kind of hard to film because it's a flat black in a dark environment, but the blockout plate's finally done, and I think it looks pretty damn good, to be honest. You know, it looks a lot better than the hole. Like this whole fender just used to be open with the pipe going in the middle of it. So now it looks kind of like it was planned. Kind of like it was engineered this way. So, but yeah, hopefully this helps reduce some IETs. It might not. I don't know. In theory, with me making my own kind of airbox block-off plate, keeping the engine heat out of where the cone filter is, that should help with times and performance. I will say one thing. In my last video, I replaced the filter, that cone filter from Spectre. This K&N flows a lot more. Like, I can hear more blower whine. It seems less restrictive. Like, it seems to be quicker, you know, according to the old calibrated butt dyno, but I don't know, it just seems quicker with the new K&N filter. So hopefully between the filter and my improved airbox, this might make the car a little bit quicker. Cost, the blockout plate was about $30, $35. The thermal barrier was $12 on Amazon, and that black plastic trim you could probably find online, but you could also find it local. That was like a 12 bucks. But I've got like 10 more feet of it, so I mean, I have probably, say I have 50 bucks in this. That would be a good estimate. So say I got 50 bucks in this project. Will it help? In theory, it will. I don't know. Honestly, it's kind of a performance and appearance mod, but I think if anything, it just makes it look a hell of a lot better. Kind of more less hacked together intake and more kind of like it was planned out and, you know, kind of custom. Like, that looks like, in my opinion, that looks like something you might be able to buy. So I hope this custom airbox helped you guys, you know, think about better ways to improve your LSA intake. No one makes a bolt-in cold air intake for this car, especially with the LSA swap and, you know, the routing and all that. You can buy a 90-degree bend and modify a rotofab, but from what I've seen, proven dyno numbers on the G8 and the SS, the rotofab does not flow enough air, and it actually restricts the intake. So what people do is like as big as a pipe and as big as a filter you can get. So I think some people run a 5-inch intake or 4.5-inch intake. That's all 4-inch pipe. So hopefully with the less restrictive filter, the kind of shielded airbox, that block-off plate, hopefully that drops temps a little bit and maybe makes the car perform a little bit better. But thanks again for watching my video. If you like it, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. Thanks and have a good day.